What's happening? YouTube, Eric Bauer back again with another video. I don't know, I've had this one in the works for a little while now, and just have been fucking procrastinating as usual in adding any new additional YouTube content. Although I did upload some fucking gameplay footage yesterday, the day before, recently, for a fucking game I'm playing on the PS5. Shit rules. Check it out. Hunt Down. Great fucking game. This has nothing to do with video games. This is gonna be fucking records. This fucking record, by the way, that we're listening to, fucking kills. Here's what we're scoping out. Buio Mondo, Italia Violente. It's fucking really great Italian soundtrack sounding shit. Think like Fabio Frizzi through like a fucking power violence filter. It's heavy as fuck. And doomy as shit. Speaking of Doom, it's kind of the thing right now, right? Aaron the Metal Theologian posted a video of Stoner Doom shit that he's been listening to. And he started talking to me about a lot of that stuff. And a lot of that stuff I am into, even though I don't talk about it super frequently. Gotta crack myself a nice cold one. Freem. Shit's good. Fucking refreshing as fuck. And burptacular, I might add. So it just got me kind of thinking about Doom in general, and where I kind of lie on that spectrum of preferences. I like Doom. I've talked about Doom a fair amount on here. Traditional Doom, Epic Doom. I like a fair amount of stoner shit and fucking desert rock. But when I really think about it, the stuff that has always appealed to me the most is the super sludgy shit that's birthed between like My War, the B-side of My War by Black Flag meets like Disrupt. And in that vein, when I was talking about 2020 records, I mentioned a few, but I didn't really go through the whole gamut of everything I snagged that was 2020. So here, let's look at this. This is the one that kind of came to mind. Come to Grief, with their second EP, Pray for the End. Come to Grief, as a lot of you might know or might not know, is Ex-Grief. Kind of, it's basically Grief. Who do you have on this? As far as participants go, Terry Savastano, who's like been a long stay. Jonathan Herbert, Chuck Conlon, another long stay. Tim Simpson. I mean, this is basically Grief. And they're using the name Come to Grief, which was the name of the first true full-length Grief LP, which is to this day an untouchable fucking record of downtrodden heaviness. This album, much the same. These guys just know how to fucking bludgeon the listener with some just brutal, slow, trudging, apocalyptic music. Now, Grief kind of was birthed from the ashes of Disrupt, who I mentioned earlier. And you can really hear it in that early shit. And it's funny because back then, in those days, I wasn't super well versed in sludge. But I listened to a lot of Power Violence. One of the things you would see would be like Power Violence bands doing splits with like Grief or 13 or Carol Ann or Gasp or Suffering Luna was another one. Cavity, Floor. And it was cool at the time, again, to see that contrast between like the fastcore on the A side or the Power Violence on the A side with that fucking it's just, to me, that's what epitomizes Doom, right? Like Epic Doom, yeah, it's got that feeling, like not much beats the first two Solitude Aeternus records or Candlemass, Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, or anything fucking Reverend Bizarre put out. But to me, that's more along the lines of heavy metal. Sludge is Doom. So none of this shit that we're going to be talking about is going to be like, feel good, go out to the desert, get fucking stoned, and look at the stars. Doom. This is fucking go buy some razor blades from the store, a bunch of Valium, and a couple fists of fucking liquor, and put yourself into oblivion. So that was one of the records that came out in 2020. Another one that was hasn't really been discussed much in the VC. I think Black Sheep Requiem mentioned this in a video. Is the new Ilsa record. Prayer? Oh, dude. Ilsa, we're going to talk more about Ilsa later, and Grief. But these two records from 2020, absolutely unheralded monster works. Dare I say, masterworks. Yeah, not masterworks, but fucking excellent shit. This Ilsa is a lot more mature and elevated, I think, than anything they've done up until this point. It's not my favorite record that they've done. I'm a big Ilsa fan. That shit just fucking rules. But that's another one that got overlooked a lot in 2020. That new Ilsa record, put out by Relapse. Great album. So what I'm gonna kind of do here is just chronologically go over some fucking Doom records that kind of have throughout the years informed my sense of sludge and cementing that as one of my favorite genres. Really, the more I revisit this shit, the more I remember how much I love it. And one of the first records of this ilk that I ever grabbed is this Newthgrush Corrupted split. This is a OG copy. It was reissued by 20 Buck Spin or Parasitic. Either 20 bucks. I think it was 20 Buck Spin did the reissue of Newthgrush and Corrupted. Newthgrush from California area, if I'm not mistaken, and Corrupted, Japanese band that sings all in Spanish. Corrupted for me were one of those just next level bands. Like, they were so just beyond what any of their peers were doing at any given moment, minus maybe like Man is a Bastard. You've got this nice insert, Corrupted, Newthgrush. As far as the music on this goes, Newthgrush kind of started more as like in the vein of like Saint Vitus. If you listen to the unreleased record they did that would have come out in, I think it was 94, I want to say. It might have been prior to that, because Newthgrush is kind of one of those like long-standing mainstays in this particular genre of music. And I suppose, oh Jesus Christ, this record's been so fucking partied on, it's ridiculous. There's a Corrupted side. Corrupted, one of my favorite Japanese bands that ever, really. So slow, so plodding, so fucking heavy. It's incredible shit. That next brings me to the band, one of the bands I've already talked about, Grief. And I've shown this before. It's Torso by Grief. This came out in 1998. That last one was 97, the New Crush Corrupted. This is 98. Not an early Grief record. In fact, it's the second to last Grief LP. This was put out by Pessimizer Theologian, who were just like a label of fucking quality back in the day. And not the first time or last time you're going to see that label touted by me, even in this video. It's a double LP, not much in the way of shit in here. There's an insert. Do you need to see the insert? I already grabbed it, so fuck it. Torso to me is like that sweet spot of where Grief learned how to take the riffs that they were already putting together and refine them a little bit. It's not any faster, not any less heavy than anything that they'd done previously, but I think one of the complaints that a lot of people who listen to like old Grief would probably come up with is that the riffs don't have a lot of staying power. It's mostly the tone of the album that you remember rather than the actual songs. Well, with Torso, it kind of changes a little bit. Like the songs themselves become memorable, and there's fucking riffs that get stuck in your head. Shit's brutal. Fucking rules. Check it out. Next one we're going to look at is another one on Life is Abuse. Dystopia, The Aftermath. Everyone loves Human Equals Garbage, including myself. But for my money, this is the fucking Dystopia record. I just look at that fucking... Nothing says misanthropy more to me than this fucking photo. It's so good. This record sees what they were doing on Human Equals Garbage, and again, ups the songwriting, ups the memorability of the riffs. The vocals, I think, stand out a little bit more on this. Lyrically, though, is where they really kind of gain their footing on this album. Like I said, I love Human Equals Garbage. It's an all-time favorite. But when you go back and revisit it, a lot of the lyrics are just really angsty. There's a lot of almost laughable angst on that record. This, however, they kind of replace the angst with like real life struggles, real life issues, real life problems, and it's so good. It's just fucking killer. I love every track on this EP. This is an OG. It's a 4-track EP on a 12-inch record. It does have, if I'm not mistaken, an etching on the B side. Yeah. Which is just a crazy etching. It's a crazy Dystopia logo. I know it's hard to see, but it's killer. This record it's a gem. Fucking gem. This band, I mean, guys in this band would go on to be involved with bands like Mind Rot, Asunder, even Ghoul. Dino Samis was in Asunder and Ghoul. I want to say a few of the guys involved with this throughout the years were also involved with like Ludacra. Early on, Ludacra's, I don't remember which album, but they had an album released by Pessimizer as well. Another great band, not Doom. Now in that Dystopia vein, here's another, this is a gem right here. This is one of those records that like you wish more people knew about. Sea of Deprivation with fucking Catharsis and Disharmony, released in 2000. This band, complete dystopia worship, carcinogen worship. Because what was dystopia other than a carcinogen ripoff when it came down to it? This is a fold-out LP. I'm not going to pull it out. This artwork is so stark. It's so just like imposing, and that is really what this record sounds like. It is heavy, it's gloomy, but it's also hardcore in the same way that Dystopia were. Awesome, underrated shit. That was another U.S. band. You got another one from the U.S. that we were going to talk about. This is probably one of the bright spots of this particular episode of High Definition Television. We're talking about On the Lam by Cavity, picture disc LP put out by Hydra Head in fucking 2000, same year as that Sea of Deprivation. This is more familiar. It's more warm. It's brighter. It's not as fucking miserable as a lot of the stuff that's in this list. And it's heavy as fuck. This band, I feel like they didn't get their due or their just rewards as far as what they contributed to the scene at the time that they were around, the bands that they fucking also contributed to. Not to miss out on talking about, like, Floor is another fucking killer band of this ilk that had members involved with Cavity as well. Great stuff from Florida. Shit rules. Where am I here? That's like a halfway point. I'm going to flip the record. Do you mind? I hope not. I'm going to do it anyway. Silence is weird. Sweet green vinyl. I'm not usually like a big stand for fucking colors, but this fucking green suits this record really well. Especially when you put it next to that fucking album cover. It's killer. Killer! Aye. Okay, back on track. Next record I want to talk about. Graves at Sea. Documents of Grief, their first EP. This is a LP version put out by Creation Records, who was a Seattle label. I'm pretty sure they don't exist anymore. Run out of Zion's Gate, the record store here in Seattle, which is a really good record store. It's one of those shops that I'd say if you come to Seattle and you want to buy records and you want to buy metal records or punk records, Zion's Gate, Creation Records is a place to go. As far as this album goes, 2003, and it's out fucking standing. It's doomy, Sabbathy driven sludge. I would compare it more to like Weed Eater or like Bongzilla. A bit more dismal, miserable, depressive. There's a lot of warm tones to this record. I would say it's definitely friendly to like the people who are more into the stoner doom shit. Did you catch that? Cat's flipping out. His brother's at the vet. He's been at the vet since about 3 o'clock this morning. I had to take him to the emergency clinic last night, and he got surgery today. So that's something. Where was I before I was so rudely interrupted? The next record I want to talk about is this record by Torch, Meanderthal. This is not Torch's first album. Their first album is fucking amazing. I remember when I first heard that when I was living in Las Vegas, and this is probably the bright spot of this episode. This album is warm. It's not as depressive or oppressive, but it is still heavy as hell. I'm not going to fold out this record. This record folds out to insanity. The artwork on here, though, is amazing. This is probably one of my favorite LPs in the collection. And the record itself is just, it's killer. Torch, members of Floor, members of Cavity. They also have members involved in the hardcore band Mikago NT, which is like a raw punk D-beat band, kind of similar to like Gas Miasma out of Florida, as well as Caveman Cult involved in Torch also. Not a big Caveman Cult fan, but this Torch album just annihilates. It's warm, it's catchy, but it's also devastating. It's so good. This is a gem, and not easy to come by these days. I love this record. It's a 10 out of 10, in my opinion. So good. Next record. Already talked about them. The very beginning. The very beginning. We talked about this shit. This is the first full length from Ilsa. See if I can get the name. Tutti il colori del buio. It's probably terrible pronunciation. I love this record. It's not my favorite Ilsa material. The EP that preceded this, which I was torn between showing that one instead. I think this album is probably a little bit more accessible. Ilsa, they stand at that precipice of like what you would get if somebody was obsessed with Left Hand Path, the B-side of My War, and that early Grief material. Just excellent, sludgy, grinding, hardcore doom. It's fucking incredible. And this record stock is seriously some of the heaviest stock in a record I've ever seen. Awesome artwork. Yes, they are kind of a horror-obsessed band, but they're also really in line with like my political ideals, which is appealing to me. I believe, in fact, one of the members has a commemorative tattoo to the bombing of Haymarket Square. Is that in Chicago? Back in the late 1800s, where a bunch of anarchists got blamed for a bombing during a Union rally. And sometime later that year, like 11 of them were hanged in the same square in which the riot occurred, where a lot of people were killed. So they have that kind of ideal and ethic in their music, which, you know, that's a win for me, really. Another band with incredible ideals that doesn't stray too far from that same spectrum would be Hazarder with Against His Story, Against Leviathan. This was released, this is a joint release by like more labels than I can count, but one of the labels involved was Neanderthal Stench. And Neanderthal Stench is like a label of quality. Like almost anything they release, I'm guaranteed to enjoy. And this record's no exception. It is filthy, dirty, it's catchy doom in the best sense of being almost like that line between like sludge and like Sabbath worship is what you get with this Hazarder. They got the name for the album, Against His Story, Against Leviathan, from the title of a book that came out. It was written in 1983 by a gentleman named Freddie Perlman. And that is this book right here. I read this in high school, and it kind of blew my mind. It's basically, it's an essay. It's a very long essay. This copy of the book is just over 300 pages about anarcho-primitivism and the ways in which civilization has kind of been fucked from the get-go. As far as the title itself goes, Against Leviathan, Leviathan was the book written about Hobbes, which he used the term Leviathan to talk about government, but more specifically civilization. So anytime you're reading like classical text, philosophical literature, and you see a reference to Leviathan, it's not talking about Leviathan, woo! It's talking about civilization. It's talking about society. It's talking about corporate theocracy and being against that. This book is amazing. It's one of the things that appealed to me about this book when I first read it was that a lot of books of this nature are kind of dry. There's not a lot of like momentum to push somebody who's not interested or invested in this type of topic. And this is a book perfectly suited for the layman. In fact, I would say it's mostly prose. It's beautifully written and engaging, and the arguments that it posits, you know, I really identified with, and I think really struck a chord with a lot of the like hardcore kids, crusty kids in my generation. And you see elements of like the after effects of that in the imagery in bands like Fatum or Cancer Spreading or Instinct for Survival or Appalachian Terror Unit. Another band that I think kind of falls into that ilk. This is one of my favorite records of 2016. And I am talking about this record by Bader Vogu. Very glossy cover. Love that cover art. It's fucking beautiful. Amazing painting. It's a gatefold double LP. These guys are from, I want to say, the Bay Area. I first stumbled across this band because they did a split with the band Wilt from Seattle, who are a great crusty, stenchcore informed hardcore band out of the Seattle area. And Bader Vogu, they're like a doomier, stonier version of that. So you get that fucking pulsing, rumbling bolt thrower heaviness, but through like the filter of a bong. It's awesome. Bader Vogu, fucking Roth is the name of the album from 2016. Stellar fucking record. And the last record I want to talk about before I end this is another reissue, another one from Neanderthal Stench. It's Electro Zombies. He Visto. Electro Zombies come from Santiago, Chile, and this album was initially released in 2008, reissued in 2017. I had never heard of this band prior to when this was reissued in 2017, because they did a split 7-inch with Doom, the UK crust gods. In fact, this record has a cover of Police Bastard by Doom, as well as a cover of Countess Bathory by Venom. But as far as what you get with Electro Zombies is a very good, a very well done homage almost to like that early Grief shit, early I Hate God, or Asbestos Death would be another good point of reference for influences on this band. If you're not familiar with Asbestos Death, that was the project that they had 2 EPs. I want to say both were issued by Profane Existence, featuring members that would go on to Sleep and Ohm. Doesn't sound anything like either Sleep or Ohm, but it's great, just sludge, for lack of a better word to describe it all. That Electro Zombies record, it's phenomenal. It was one of my favorite releases of 2017, even though it came out in 2008. Just fucking killer stack of Doom. That's been my mindset. That's the stuff that's been like getting me through my days as of late. That and fucking friends, man. Never undervalue your friends. Never undervalue your family either. The people who stick by you. That's my lesson for the day. And on that note, I'm going to end things right here. I appreciate all the engagement. I hope some of you want to talk to me about some of the shit in this stack. That's why I put these things up on the internet, to get that conversation going and get people engaged. That said, Take care of yourselves, man. Stay healthy. Keep it real. Peace out. Later, YouTube.